as we're all squeezing our way into the meditation hall, and hopefully those on Zoom are finding it easier to find a place. But just a reminder, there are 4 weekly practice groups here at the center. We have one Sunday morning at 10:30, this one. And then Shelley Graff usually teaches every Sunday evening. That's in person only, 7 to 8:30 on Sunday evenings. And then I teach just on Zoom on Tuesday evenings, 7 to 8:30. And then Shelley teaches on Wednesday evenings, and that's a hybrid, both in person and on Zoom. So just folks to know that there are those 4 opportunities. And then there are also a number of weekly practice check-ins, which are more oriented towards Q&A discussion time, but also include a guided meditation. And Wynn Fricke and I do one on Sunday afternoon at 4:30. And Stacy McClendon leads one at 12 noon on Tuesdays. Shelley does one on Wednesday morning that's just in person, I believe at 9 or possibly 9:30, forget. 8:30, thanks, Gabe. And then Shelley also does one every other Friday. And is that at 9?
Yeah.
And that's at 9 a.m. Well, one's the unraveling racism, right?
So yeah, this one has, yeah.
Yeah, so as a practice check-in, it's every other week. Great, so let's settle in for our meditation time. However it is for us, this body, these are the conditions, right, that we need to connect with and in a sense harmonize with, whether we like it or not, the way the body is. It's not like there's an alternative. And the way we transform our experience isn't by getting a different bodily experience, but beginning to experiment with how we're opening to the body, how we're relating to the body. With friendliness, with kindness, or more a habit of controlling, wanting to fix, judgmental. So much of the quality of our experience has to do with how the heart is relating. And we can't help the fact that sometimes aversion will get triggered. Sometimes greed will get triggered. But we can be relating to the greed and aversion with wisdom and kindness. Oh yeah, sometimes it's like this. I'm activated, I'm triggered, I'm resisting, and it feels like this. And this is really the art of being a wise, loving human being, is this willingness to explore how best to relate to what's moving right now in my heart, mind, body, in our world, our community, family. How best to be relating now. So in that way, we transform the moment by transforming how we relate. So we can begin this practice, as I mentioned, just by coming into relationship with the sitting body. And seeing if we can be in relationship with the sitting body, the breathing body, in a way that sets ease in motion, peace in motion, instead of agitation. And this is a powerful antidote to feeling helpless in life. We're directly, immediately, moment by moment, exploring how the mind is relating to the experience of the moment and how it matters. How we can set in motion more suffering for us and others, or we can set in motion healing and peacefulness. So in this way, we're directly uncovering how it is that happiness, well-being arises, how it is that suffering, stress arises. And our learning, in a sense, is independent of what people tell us or what our cultural conditioning might have been. But we're figuring it out in this very immediate, direct way. How to take care of this life and how to take care of this world. And we have our pointing out instructions from our teacher, the Buddha, that we can check out to see how that works for us. Where he invites us, encourages us to be both present, intimate, and free of attachment, free of grasping, trying to make something happen. So in this very simple way, sitting here, opening to the experience of the body sitting, the body breathing, and realizing that the mind, moment by moment, is relating to the body, is in relationship with the body sitting, breathing, and how the mind is relating matters. So how can we be relating in a way that sets something good in motion? And refrains from setting more stress in motion. And we can explore, as I mentioned, the teachings, the suggestion from the Buddha to be both intimate, clearly aware, feeling deeply the way it is, but without attachment, without controlling, without projecting, so letting things be. Intimacy and letting things be. So being in relationship with the body, the breathing body, in a sense is a microcosm of the way we're relating to our whole life. Other people, the world, our duties and responsibilities. We're just going to continue in silence and see what we can learn from the mind being in relationship with the sitting body, the breathing body. Keep returning to this study, this working ground of our deepening wisdom. And testing out for ourselves this teaching from the Buddha, intimacy and letting things be. So we're remembering this study, contemplating the body as it actually is here. What does it mean to be intimate or open, receptive to this thing we call the body, this unfolding experience of the body? Undefended, so open, not needing the experience to be different than it is. So in a way, we're learning how to be vulnerable to what's unfolding as our body, right here, right now. Not even needing to understand it or to explain it to ourselves, to define it in any way. Just being open and receptive. Keeping the body in mind. Good to see everybody here. Take a moment to stretch as you need to. So welcome everyone, especially those who are here for the first time. I know it's not always easy walking into a new place. Just to want to remind folks, you should do this once a month, that this center operates on this wonderful, simple principle of generosity, this circle of giving and receiving. So from the very first days in 1993, the leaders, myself and others, we decided just to have all the teachings, all the programs available freely. So when we come, like you are here today, online, in person, receiving that as a free gift, no strings attached, which for me, as I'm sure for many of you, it's not easy just receiving it as a free gift. And then as you're part of the community, you might naturally want to give back, to volunteer. Gabe Keller-Flores, our operations manager, is here today. You can check in with him if you want. Lots of ways that this place happens because of the volunteer support from so many people. It's amazing. Yesterday, there were 28 or so people here for the workday that they do twice a year, led by our building committee, just a great set of leaders. And Austin's doing technology, and Miriam and Dan and Maddie are here today to be our program host. So just examples of how people contribute. And then if you want to give back, find a way to give back in a way that makes you happy. And it seems to work. You know, we've been doing this now for 32 years, I guess. And we have a wonderful center that we purchased and developed, and no debt. We have a beautiful retreat center, 80 miles or so east of here in western Wisconsin, all through that beautiful circle of giving and receiving. And nobody can tell us how to do it, like in our particular role, because everyone's life situation is different. So the invitation is just to find your way, to experiment a little bit. If you give too much, it's not going to feel good because you're not taking care of your other needs in your life. And also, if you ignore it, like if you have this idea that common ground is the inexpensive place to practice Buddhism, well, what does that attitude feel like in your heart? And it's not just in terms of your relationship with common ground. This idea of dharma is the Pali word for this practice. It's an essential part of awakening, right? Because it liberates our heart from all the different ways that stinginess operates. Because we have a lot of conditioning around being a frightened animal that wants to survive, right? So that's just part of the legacy of being a human being. But we're not limited by that fear, that survival fear. It's part of our lives, right? Can't be other than that. But we can cultivate other qualities other than that fear of survival, where we got to pack away as much as we can. And by the way, as we all know, we can't hold on to it in the end anyway. It's good to remind ourselves, maybe to remind a few other people on the planet, that that's how it is. That doesn't lead to lasting happiness, that packing stuff away where we have billions or a lot of excess resources. In a way, it just makes us more anxious. We have more to lose, more to protect. More fear around the truth that some people don't have very much. So what am I doing with so much? So this alternative, this circle of giving and receiving, is a much more skillful, pragmatic, and liberating way to be living our lives. And that's why we chose way back when we started the center in the early 90s to practice this way. And it's also in the spirit of the monasteries in Southeast Asia. They didn't have a fee to come in and learn from the nuns and monks, right? It was just given freely. So today I want to talk about this practice we do here. Some of you know that common ground, generally speaking, is a Vipassana meditation center or insight meditation center. And a lot of times we might think of insight meditation or Vipassana meditation. That's what Vipassana means, insight, seeing things clearly. We might think of it as a particular technique that we find in the Buddhist tradition to see clearly the way it is. And it's okay to think of it that way, but a more nuanced understanding is that Vipassana or insight is a actual capacity of our mind, of our heart right now. Right? We're either seeing, experiencing this moment, each of us are experiencing this moment, either experiencing with insight or experiencing in a conditioned way. So when we experience, and this would be the ordinary way, the usual way, when we're experiencing our life, any moment of our experience in the usual way, then we're really experiencing the thought, the expectation I have around what's happening to me right now. In a way, we're seeing, experiencing our own projection. So you might walk into your home at the end of this program, you'll eventually get home, and you think, okay, I'm seeing clearly, this is my apartment, this is my house, these are the people I live with. But a lot of what we're experiencing is our idea, our projection on to the experience, including right now. So seeing with insight, this is a capacity we have not to be confused or dependent on the projection. That projection is going to be there, and especially if we get triggered or activated, and somebody activates a lot of fear in me, or activates a lot of greed in me, right? But I can't necessarily stop as I'm experiencing it, as I'm vulnerable to what's going on in me and around me. I can't stop being activated, these unwholesome qualities being triggered. But I can cultivate the capacity to have insight. Oh, anger has gotten triggered. It's like this. Greed has gotten triggered. Wanting to close down, crawl into my little, bubble, whatever it might be, distract myself, has gotten triggered in me. But we can see it all with insight. We can see the internal and external unfolding of experience as it actually is. Yatha Bhutta is the Pali phrase for seeing things clearly, feeling things deeply, just as they are. That's what we're doing. That's in a way, as the Buddha diagnosed our human problem. First of all, he diagnosed his own human situation and then shared it outward from there. But as he diagnosed it, the underlying problem is we're not seeing clearly. So when we look out into the world, in our families, in our communities, the wider world, and we see the terrible suffering and injustice and people being taken advantage of, how does that come to be? Whether we're talking about our own personal suffering or the wider suffering in the world, how does that come to be? Well, we're not seeing things as they are. We're seeing our projection, like, those of you who I don't like, you're out to get me. So I got to defend myself. I've got to crush you before you crush me, or whatever sort of scenario we might have. We have all that going on all the time. It's like we're constantly creating and maintaining lawsuits, conflicts, hierarchical lists, who's on my side, who's not on my side, patching it up, keeping it active in our mind. And then we end up with a world and lives like we have right now. Our life, the way it is for me, the way it is for you, the way it is for the bulk of us on this planet. So the practices from the Buddha, insight meditation, vipassana meditation, learning how to see things as they are, from my understanding, from my experience, is exactly the medicine we need when we have a life like we have right now, all of us. Sometimes it can seem that, well, this is not the time to cultivate a meditation practice, right? because there's a lot to do. Of course, there's probably always been a lot to do. I'm not sure there's ever been a time where there wasn't a lot to do. But clearly now there's a lot to do in our lives personally and in the wider world. There's a lot needing to be addressed. And the question is how to do that effectively. How can we really take care of our life? How can we really take care of the world? And are we willing to check it out for ourselves to see what really helps? Because it takes some confidence to be a learner, to actually check things out for ourselves, as opposed to be a follower and just do what we think, the culture is telling us or people we respect are telling us, and we just follow, because it isn't easy to sort of do the basic research, which is like we were doing a little bit during the guided sit, contemplating how the mind is relating to the body as a microcosm to how the mind is relating a lot of the time in our life by disconnecting, right? Maybe you noticed that during the guided sit, that a lot of the time, even though we established the intention to be with the body, this body right here, this unfolding experience of sensation, pain and pleasure and whatever else, but it isn't easy even to be a good student for 5 or 10 minutes, let alone 35 minutes or whatever it was that we sat. Right? Did you notice? That's actually an insight, just to see how hard it is to sustain present moment awareness. How rare it is to even line up several moments in a row where there's an unwavering presence that's not being interrupted by mental projection and then the mind getting intoxicated with our mental projection, our ideas about things. And then when we have some steadiness of present moment awareness with our study object, like the body, because it's such a relevant place to study. It's as I often say, it's our primary relationship. And so many of our other relationships with each other, with the wider world, is just a reverberation of how we've been relating to the body. So if we tend to be disconnected, unaware of the body, well, you'll probably see that pattern playing itself out in other relationships you have. Or if your tendency is to be controlling of your body, always trying to fix it, always judging it, always trying to lock things down and make them the way you think they should be, well, you'll see that pattern playing itself out. If you tend to be superficial, then you'll see that pattern playing itself out. So in a way, we're learning wherever we can learn, what is the skillful way to be relating? And as I mentioned in the guided sit, we do have pointing out instructions just to check out. We don't want to believe what the Buddha said, but it's a starting point, okay? Intimacy versus distractedness, being open. Even that idea, and then translating that idea into experience, like, what does it mean to be open? What does it mean to have a mind that's not dependent on a fixed idea, a fixed view of what's happening or who I am or what this is, what this experience is? What does it really mean to be open? Because life is so scary and so uncertain and so insecure in all kinds of different ways, we generally gravitate away from being open. And we'd much rather be sure, even when the thing that we're sure about is heavy, like I'm bad. Sometimes we move through the world and that's the one thing we know, I'm bad, I'm no good, never been good, or whatever, right? We can have a negative sense of self, but at least we have some ground, right? I know something, I'm bad. Or, the world is bad. See, that's not the same as being open, having a fixed idea about anything. And it doesn't mean we become suddenly stupid and we can't sort of make choices or find our way in life. It just means we're not holding as a way, as a counterweight to the truth of uncertainty, the truth of vulnerability, the truth of the exposure that just is here, being human. There's so much, just the way it is generally in our life, specifically in the world more generally, it doesn't lend itself to fixed ideas. Any fixed idea, we can consider that delusion. Thinking that we know anything, thinking that we know is a good definition of what the Buddha means by ignorance or delusion. Because we're not open. When we think we know, when we think we're certain about something, then we're no longer open, present, intimate, right? Instead, what's happening is we're defending what we think we know. We see this all the time observing others, like, we're having a conversation or we're just observing somebody else having a conversation, and we'll just get that sense that somebody is just defending what they think they know. And whatever comes at them, they have their way of massaging it to fit what they know, to fit their idea about things. And so much of what's going on these days is that. So one thing that's really different is just taking up all day long, all lifelong, this contemplation on what would it be to be open, to be intimate, to be undefended, to be unfixed. And just to check out for ourselves, like, is this a pragmatic, functional, skillful way to be operating in the world? Can I take care of what needs to be taken care of with this openness? What's lost by releasing fixed notions, fixed ideas? Is that okay? Because you don't want to turn what I'm saying into another fixed idea, right? That would be the kind of tendency of our mind. Okay, now I got it. Let's lock this down. And on it goes. The basic process for the deepest insight, the deepest release, full awakening, nibbana, nirvana, these teachings from the Buddha, which may, for some of us, seem really far off. And it is profound and it is subtle for sure. I'm not saying it's just available all the time for everyone. But the basic mechanism is bringing this openness in more and more moments of our life. Because the truth of the way it is going to transform our heart, our mind. We don't go in and transform our heart and mind from like wrong understanding to right understanding, or somehow download it from some spiritual tradition, get that mind meld from the Buddha. Right? Nobody can sort of do that transformation. The transformation of our heart, right, according to how the Buddha understood his own experience, the transformation comes organically when the sensitive heart, which we already have, right, our heart, our mind is already sensitive. So we don't need to go find sensitivity. We need to recognize it, appreciate it, right, and value it, right? And then we use that natural sensitivity to connect. Only just connect, right? Just open, just receive. And that's what will transform our heart and mind. It's the continuity of that over and over. Because ignorance and hate and greed and stinginess and pride and conceits, self-centeredness, it all depends on being in our own constructions, our own bubbles that the mind, because of its conditioning, construct. And we see this falling away. Like there are times, I'm guessing this has happened to many in the room, whether it was a formal meditation period or just a time in your life where there was this continuity of present moment awareness, or this intimacy, this openness, and the constructions for a period of time began to fall away. And the mind began to experience the way it is. Not the way we think it is, but the way it actually is. And feel the rightness of that and the peace of that. Even though the world hadn't changed, there still was the injustice in the world, but there was the realization, right? This is a very immediate and personal, so-called personal experience, right? That the heart can be okay with the mess of it all. The mess of my body, the mess of the world around me, the mess of my internal conditioning that I've received through, the process of being raised in a particular culture with my particular parents and the particular interactions that I've had. That's all very messy. That doesn't change with an insight. What changes is it's a realization of how to be radically intimate and radically unburdened, and therefore capable of being really responsive in a beautiful, compassionate way, precisely because of this realization, this deepening insight of seeing the way it is. So this is a promise of, I think, any spiritual tradition, but in particular Buddhism, right? It's not helplessness when the world is the way it is. But it isn't. It's also useful to remind ourselves that our practice isn't going to change the force of greed and hatred, generally speaking, in the world. There will be reverberations to our own awakening. But what is going to get uncovered is this capacity to be really right in the middle of it and unburdened with our own conditioning and the conditioning of everyone around us. We'll be able to see it. So when greed gets triggered in me or greed gets triggered in someone else, we understand what it is and what it isn't. When hate gets triggered in me or in somebody else, we're not confused by it. And that's what really allows for an effective response, is the non-entanglement with greed and hate, not being confused by it. And so much like when we look at the world, it's like greed and hate is triggering greed and hate, and on and on and on. So where is the end of that? What is the alternative? So the way we talk about this in the tradition is this, and I'll come back to this over the next few weeks. It's a real central teaching, and it's the way we understand the deepening of insight, the deepening of wisdom, is this, we talk about opening to the way it is. Dhamma, or dharma is the word we sometimes use for the way it is, something that's here and now, available right here and now. It's not, we don't need a different moment. It's timeless. It's available, And when we start to open to the way it is, it draws us in because it's directly sensed as being relevant. Like, oh, how could I have missed this? It's right here. It's like the mystery, the truth. It's right here. And remember, it's not about, we often think, well, I gotta look in a special way. No, it has much more to do with relaxing, not trying to find something. Because we can't find something new. We're always going to be replicating the ignorance that's operating in the mind. So we have to, I'm reminded of a way long time ago, this is back in the early 80s, I went to see a friend of mine who was a grad student at the University of Chicago studying political theory. And I was just there for a couple nights, and we went to a lecture where somebody was giving a talk about just understanding the peace in the Old Testament once the Jews left Egypt, and they wandered in the desert for 40 years or so, whatever it was. And this professor was sort of interpreting that in political terms, like all those people who were born into slavery in Egypt, that it was a strategic move to not settle in a place until there was sort of a new generation of people who weren't born in slavery, because we tend to recreate things over and over again. So this is where our practice comes in. It's like how to have a mind that's different than the mind that's creating this, our life, our world, right? Just replicating it over and over again. That's that term you've probably heard of, samsara. How we keep doing what we've done before, keep getting similar results that we've gotten before, over and over again. Even though we don't want the same results, we get the same results. So you see that this new way, which is really a simple way of relating to experience, is a radical intervention. Because I'm not trying, when we practice, we're not trying to fix the world and we're not trying to fix our lives, which is the strong motivation we have, but instead we're trying to connect with the way it is. We're trying to see and feel the way it is. So it may sound the same, but it's really different. We're not trying to save ourselves or fix ourselves or save the world. We're trying to understand how it is. We're going back to sort of primary research. What the heck's going on? What is this? Because we think we know. And as I said earlier, that's a good definition of ignorance, thinking that we know. We should replace that with, I don't think I know. What can I do? What would be in the direction of seeing clearly, seeing in a new way, instead of doing what I've done before and getting the results I've gotten before? So for each of us, it's just like all day long, not just when you're doing your formal meditation time. Just be curious about, what does it mean to be open now? What would that feel like and look like in this moment, to be radically present, open, interested, released, undefended, receptive? So these are just different words that can help us sort of do this exploration. And is that way of relating, is it radically different? Because that will be a good clue. Oh, this may be the way, because you'll see how much it's not the usual way. We're usually not open. It's almost like you'll see yourself being open in the way that I'm talking about is an altered state. It should be our natural state, but it will be experienced as an altered state, like you're having a mystical experience or something, simply because it's so rare. It's like our minds, just like, through history, cultures have dominated other cultures, colonialism, it happens within our own minds, with pre-existing ideas sort of lock down the mind. And so this is all that's allowed. So when we're able to sort of step outside of that domination, with an idea dominating our mind, and actually be present, open, it seems as if we're experiencing a different world. It's the world independent of, fixed ideas. When you study the early teachings of the Buddha, there's this real emphasis on just appreciating fixed ideas and the damage and the limitations of all of our fixed ideas. And we just presume, without having checked for ourselves, that we need that fixedness to do what we do in life. But we haven't actually tried to be ourselves, try to live this life without that fixedness, without that certainty, pretending. It's just a pretend certainty because we don't actually have certainty. And the other thing is we become mistrustful of peacefulness and calm. Because part of being open, right, is realizing like that we have the capacity to be at ease, to be calm, to be peaceful, whatever it is that's showing up in our body, in our heart, in our mind, around us, in us. We have that inherent capacity. I mean, you could just check right now. And even if I'm activated in some way right now, I can relate to that in a peaceful way. It really goes hand in hand with understanding the experience of being open. Okay, this is being known, this is being felt. I often give this example because it's just so present for me, but I just have a lot of physical pain. I had some spinal damage because of my big medical crisis a year and a half ago, a couple years ago now, I guess. And I feel it all the time, when I'm sitting, especially just the weakness and pain, the ache in my spine in different places. And it's just so interesting, like I was mentioning in the guided instructions, like how to be open in a fresh way. Because it's just like such a strongly conditioned sense that this is a problem I need to deal with. I need to be more devoted to my PT exercises. Why aren't I doing my PT exercises every day? Or whatever. That just that mental proliferation that comes, or maybe if I change my posture a little bit, But what is the experience of pain? Wherever you're experiencing pain, it could be mental, emotional pain, or physical pain. What is the experience of pain in the context of being open? And what is the experience of pain in the context of being closed, like having a fixed idea? Pain, for example, pain is bad. This pain is bad. It's a problem for me. See, we don't even question that understanding, that fixed view, that pain is bad, right? It may even seem like absurd that I'm even suggesting that you could relate to physical pain, emotional pain in an open way. Like, what is it without any projection whatsoever? What is that experience? Same thing like when you see something in the news, or you hear something about a friend that's going through a really hard time. What is it like to really receive that without any projection? Just to let it in, to let it move through, to be touched. And this gets us to the teachings on the three characteristics that I'll keep coming back to for the next several weeks. I'll just sort of introduce them briefly in the next 10 minutes. But when we open to Dhamma the way it is, when we cultivate that quality of vipassana to see clearly the way it is, then we're going to see the changing, unsatisfactory, impersonal nature of whatever the heart is sensitive to. Right? It's already this way. It's always been this way. And again, this isn't something to believe, but this is what the elders in our tradition tell us. And this is my own experience. Whatever I open to with sincerity, with some sort of real application of my heart to the task of being open, I'll notice how ephemeral, unfixed the moment is. How the moment, what's unfolding for me, I can't grasp it in a way that's satisfactory. I can't own it in a way that's satisfactory, that gives me the ground that my ego wants, the security. I can't. I haven't been able to find that in any experience. And whatever it is that's unfolding, in that experience of being open, whatever is unfolding, whatever that open experience is for me, doesn't seem very personal at all. I can't find in any way how it's personal, except when I project that idea that it is personal onto it. Then it seems personal. But if I'm just being open and I'm not projecting the idea this is happening to me, there's nothing really personal about sound or sight or sensation or emotion or thinking something. It's just what it is. And the amazing thing is, whatever experience we open to, we find those three characteristics. They're not really different things. They're just different ways of looking at any moment of experience where we're seeing with insight. We're seeing the way it is. We'll see the ephemeral, insubstantial, impersonal, unsatisfactory nature of experience. And so the letting go, the letting it be, the non-clinging is a very organic, natural result. Nobody figures out how to, oh, I'm going to let go. Oh, I'm going to let things be. I read this book that we should just let things be, and I'm just going to do that. It doesn't work that way, right? Because that just becomes the next thing the heart's grasping. You know, I'm the person who's going to let things be. And then anything that gets in the way of that is like some kind of threat, because I know the way. The way is to let things be. And, you know, we just want to preach to other people too. You know, you should just let things be. You should let go. But letting go clearly does happen. Like in the same way that grasping happens, letting go of grasping happens. And when we study how that happens in our own heart, in our own lives, we see that letting go is the natural result of seeing things clearly. What do we see clearly? Well, one of the things we start to see clearly is grasping doesn't help. You know, we might meet somebody, like if you're single, you might meet somebody who you're really attracted to, you just think is great, you really want them to like you and spend time with you and all of that, right? But grasping that idea that this person is the one for you, that's just suffering. It doesn't actually, if anything, it gets in the way of the possibility of the relationship working as, you know, for you, the two of you to become a couple. It doesn't serve any purpose except the purpose of suffering. But of course, it's not easy to feel that emotion without personalizing it and solidifying it and grasping, unless we practice being open. Oh, attraction feels like this. You know, to see the experience of attraction, to experience it with wisdom, with insight, then we're seeing that, oh yes, sometimes that arises. It's not permanent. When certain conditions are there, then there is attraction. And when those conditions, supporting conditions aren't there, attraction ceases. And whenever I take that attraction personally, it hurts, right? We solidify around that, like I'm the one who's attracted, I'm the one who will be happy if this works out. Then all of a sudden there's a sense of somebody suffering, of somebody who's stressed, of somebody who's burdened in their heart. And all of that, when seen with enough perspective, is seen as being nature, natural, of course, not personal. Like when we feel a lot of attraction, did we consciously choose to feel that attraction? No, it arose because of the supporting conditions. When those conditions are the way that they are, then this emotion we call attraction shows up. Oh, it's like this. So I'll keep coming back to these three characteristics. I see that the children are here. I want to just make an announcement. Gabe Keller-Flores over here and Shelley Graff will be leading a workshop in 2 weeks on Saturday the 15th, 9:30 to 4 on relating wisely to technology, right? So, and then starting the next day, Sunday the 16th, I'll lead a week-long media fast for anybody who's interested. Of course, everyone's going to find their own way to refrain from some media or a lot of media, depending on what will make sense in your life. And that will go for 1 week, the 16th of November until the 23rd. We'll meet Sunday the 16th at 4:30, and we'll meet the following Sunday 1 to 3. And then there's an optional group on Thursday. But you can get more information on our weekly calendar or our online calendar. That's where almost all of the important program information is. You can find that on our website. And we also have a weekly email that's important. If you want to feel part of the community, you can sign up on our website or just send the center an email and we'll get you on that weekly email list and you'll get all the program updates and little teachings from Shelley and I and others who write the weekly blurb for the weekly email. Oh, yeah, why don't you say it, Patrice? Oh, no, remind me though, because I have to say it online.
So next week from 2 to 3:30, we do our annual Day of Remembrance. And it is for people who have beings, not only people who left the past life recently or some time ago. Kyoko and I set up a little altar on the floor. People bring photos. We have a guitar. And like people to share memories in a little richer. Here that we've done it. And everyone
Yeah. So anytime, or you don't even have to have a personal loss to join in, of course, because we're all, yeah, just want to relate to that part of our lives. Great, thanks, Patrice. So people online, Patrice just mentioned the annual Day of Remembrance. That's going to be a week from today, Sunday afternoon, next Sunday. What's the time? Is it on Zoom too?
No, it's only in person.
Yeah, only in person. So for people who live in the Twin Cities, you can find more information about that on our website. Thanks, everyone. So stay for the children. They're going to sing for us.